is Amanda Hatton, and this is my investigation with Building Tall and Sturdy. When I first began interning, I noticed students were interested in building. Not only were they interested in building in itself, they wanted to build tall skyscrapers. To find out what they knew about skyscrapers, I set up a series of explorations. First, I gave students pictures of buildings and skyscrapers and encouraged them to sort the two using their prior knowledge. After sorting them, they were better equipped to discuss differences between the two. Since they were interested in skyscrapers, I figured they would enjoy building their own. Students were encouraged to think about the process it takes to build a skyscraper. First, I showed them pictures of blueprints and encouraged them to draw their own. It wasn't too long into this exploration before I noticed students' lack of interest. After some discussion with the children, I realized they were not interested in the process, but more so the act of building itself. To follow student interests, I set up a series of materials explorations. Within the explorations were possible materials they could use in building. The materials were wood, cardboard, aluminum foil, and styrofoam. While discovering what students knew about the materials, I also challenged them to think about ways to get them to stay together. Among other things, students discovered they could write, crumble, break, stack, tape, glue, and lean many of the materials together. After the materials discovery, I encouraged them to think about building sturdy. Although this was a new word to some, students were able to show me what it meant and decided wood was the best material for building sturdy. To take building sturdy a step further, I introduced city blocks, which are also made of wood, and encouraged them to think of strategies for building tall and sturdy. Along with building sturdy, they were to come up with strategies for testing sturdiness. Students used techniques from the materials exploration and leaned and stacked the city blocks. A few strategies for testing sturdiness included stacking until they would collapse or simply touching it. One of the students encouraged everyone to put their blocks together and build like Jenga in order to build tall and sturdy. Sure enough, they crisscrossed their blocks and the ending result was somewhat tall and sturdy. Next, I drew a cascading building on construction paper and encouraged students to use city blocks to build it. First, they began building flat because the city blocks were not strong enough. Next, a student suggested using large blocks because they are stronger. After moving to the block area, students worked together to create something similar to my drawing. To challenge students furthermore, I flipped the same drawing upside down and encouraged students to build it using big blocks. Before beginning to build, they predicted it would not work and would in fact fall over because the base was too skinny. During a group time, I introduced another term, cantilever. This type of building has a base or support smaller than the rest of the building. Students were so shocked and amazed to see a building having such a narrow base. They began to question themselves and decided to use Lego pieces to test and recreate this special type of building. Before long, they realized Lego pieces were not the best choice because they crumbled apart each time they added another piece. After all activities, students concluded a wide base was best for building tall. By now, we discovered we'd be building the brooder for ducklings. To determine the list of things that we would need, we looked at pictures and made a list of supplies. On that list were hammers, nails, screws, and screwdrivers. Although students knew the difference between hammers and screwdrivers, they used the terms nails and screws interchangeably as if they were the same thing. To correct any misconceptions, I encouraged students to sort the two while paying close attention to their characteristics. They noticed size difference, texture difference, and they also noticed the difference on the head of the nail and the screw. Before practicing using the tools, everyone gave their input and we came up with a list of safety precautions. Next, we practiced using a screwdriver and hammer and even thought about adding legs to the brooder to make it easier to move around. But the legs we chose were not the same height. After much discussion, students decided to use a marker to make a line to show where they would be cut to be the same size. After using a manual screwdriver, I assisted students with the use of a power screwdriver. They compared the two and were amazed by how fast the screw would go into the wood. After much practice, they decided a power screwdriver would also be best for putting the brooder together. With the assistance of myself and fellow teachers, students began putting the brooder together. They used a power screwdriver to begin to hold the brooder together. After much collaboration and referring back to their blueprint, the only thing left to do was add finishing touches, like a ramp and possibly wheels. Before we knew it, the brooder was finally finished.